My name is Aydre Park, and I am a wife, a mother of 3, and a daughter of Christ. And today I'm here to talk about my story, a story of hope, a story that one day God would rescue me, that He would show me that one day I would be loved and would be wanted. My story is a little bit unique, and I grew up in a really broken home. When I was 2 years old, my mom left my dad and with my 2 brothers, and we moved to De Leon, Texas, to be close to my grandfather. During that time, we actually were really poor. We lived in government housing. I still remember that, and life was hard. When I was 5, my mom finally got a house, a little house that we lived in. And actually, one night I woke up to her screaming and throwing us out the window because the house was on fire. And we lost everything in our home, but we had our lives still. And after that, the community was great, came in and supported us. And my mom was able to purchase a trailer house that we lived in on that little bitty lot. So as a kid, the trailer house was great. We had everything we needed, and we got new toys and clothes. So it's just, when you're a kid, you look at it completely different than my mother was looking at it at the time. Between the ages of 4 to probably around 6 years old, I was actually sexually abused by my mother's best friend's husband that she never knew about. And I never spoke about it, never told anyone what was going on during that time. My mom, she was fun, really outgoing, loving, and I have great memories of her. I remember going to the lake. I remember skating every Tuesday and Saturday. And my father was never there. Only thing I really knew about my dad is that he was bad. Right before my 7th birthday, it's just a memory that's planted in my head since I was a little kid that you don't forget. And I remember my mom outside sitting in a lawn chair, and I can still tell you what she was wearing, and she was writing. And my mom always wrote, but this time she was crying. And when you're little, to see your mom cry, that's tough. There's some, you just don't want to see your mom cry. And I remember that time. I remember her crying, and we went home that night, and she was very sad. And she had given a letter to my oldest brother, Sean, who was 10. And told him to give that to her boyfriend Tracy when he came, and she went to bed. And shortly after that, I went and got in bed with her, went to sleep, and then shortly after that, my middle brother Jason, who was 8 at the time, got in bed with her, and then my brother was still in the living room. And I woke up in the middle of the night to this terrible scream, and my brother flicked on the lights, and she was just shaking. And so I remember the fear at that moment, at that time, and my brother, we were really poor, we didn't have a phone, and so my brother ran across the street, the oldest brother, and called an ambulance, and that's the last time I saw Mom. We went to my great-grandmother's house and that night, and I still remember the green carpet that I laid my face on and cried while we waited. My grandfather came and got us and said that she had died. She had actually taken her life with her own depression pills. At that point, my dad came back into the story and wanted custody of us, who I despised. And when I was 7 at the time, he got custody of us, and I I had 2 hours to leave everything that I knew. My grandfather, who I adored, he was my hero. My town, my friends, my home, our toys, our things. And so we go into a little town in Tioga, and I'm introduced to my first stepmother at the time, and chaos just happens right out the gate. And it was screaming, fighting, glass jars being thrown. She broke a broom across my dad's chest one night, I remember, and we left and went to the police station. And she would flash around pornographic magazines. It was just chaos like you wouldn't believe. And shortly after, a couple months later, she actually left my dad. And then within less than a year, I had a new stepmom. Our home was chaotic. We were really poor. My dad worked for a few years, and then he became disabled and lived off a disability. We lived in probably, I want to say, 8 different homes in that town that I can remember, that we were either evicted or trashed it or whatever it could have been. We had anything from cockroaches in our home to slugs to dog feces, just not a living condition anyone would want to be in. My father never physically abused me at all. It was more of neglect. I can't tell you if he ever saw a report card of mine. Never went to a sporting event. And then when I was 17 years old, death came again, and my stepmother was killed by a drunk driver on Valentine's Day. And that was really, really tough. And it was different emotions for me at that time, because I despised my stepmom for things that happened as a child. And I was hurt by those feelings. I had a lot of guilt for those feelings, and it was really, really hard to see my dad cry a lot, and that was really tough. My mom was really good at taking us to church, and I have a memory of that from the time I was probably about 4 years old. And I still remember going up on the stage and the pastor would read us a story. I remember that. I remember sitting in the pew with her, drawing, because, I was little. And I remember Sunday school. So that was really my first glimpse into Jesus when I was little. When I was 8 years old, I actually would ride the bus to church. My mom giving me that first glimpse into going to church, and that's kind of, I didn't know a lot, but I knew that's something that I needed to do. And so I would go to church on this bus with my brothers, and it wasn't every Sunday, but it was when we could, and that meant a lot to me, because that's really where my hope began, because I knew that my life was crazy and chaotic. And I knew that God would rescue me one day, even at a young age. I just knew that. When I was right before my 9th birthday, they were having a revival in our town, and it was outside with a tent, and I still remember that. And I remember what the pastor said that day, and I truly felt that God was knocking the door of my heart. Like I could tell you what that moment felt like. And I was saved that day, and later baptized. And that's really where my journey begins. It's almost like God just kind of took my hand and guided me the rest of the way. At that point, God really put some awesome people in my life. My best friend, Juanita, my childhood friend, was the only one that knew anything about my life. She was the only one that I think I let inside my house even to see what I lived in. And she moved away when I was in 8th grade. We're still great friends. And then when I was in high school, God put another friend in my life, Jill, and her family. And her family really took me in kind of as their second daughter. And I got to see what a family was like. I got to see love. I got to see just nurture. They came to all of my sporting events. They came to all my things. They took me on vacation. And they were a really strong Christian family. And so that was important to me to be able to see that. So I graduated high school, and moved away. I remember driving away to go to OSU, go Pokes, and I thought I'll never come back to this town. I'm never coming back. Because my whole life, I really just felt like if I could just get one more year. If I could just get through one more year, I'll be out of this situation. I can move on. And so what was great about college is I got plugged into the BCO, the Baptist Collegiate Ministry. It was called BSU actually back then, and really got to learn more about God. That's where I really started to grow. And when I was in there, it was really hard for me because most of the people that were there actually came from a church background, and I was in and out of church the best I could be as a kid. And for me, I was learning, and I struggled with that because I felt that I didn't know all the stories in the Bible. I didn't know how to pronounce the names. It was so new to me, and I felt not good enough and intimidated, and that was really hard for me. And then when I was about 20 years old, life got really hard. My friend and I had a falling out, and I moved out, and I'd made a lot of mistakes along the way, and I was really just broken inside. I think for so many years, I spent my life just searching for someone to love me and to feel wanted, and I just felt empty and fell into a really deep depression. And my aunt, my mom's sister, sent me a letter, and it was my mom's suicide letter. And I remember opening it and thinking, why would she send me this letter when I'm going through such a hard time? And I opened it up, and the beginning of the letter, it says, "What do you do when you run out of hope? All I've ever clung on to was hope, and I have no hope." And for me, that devastated me to read that, because all I've ever lived on was hope. And I thought, I don't want to be like her. I don't want to be anything like that. And so that was really just a healing point for me, I think. I had some great people at the church where I could get some Christian counseling, but when I was 22, my senior year, God just continued working on my life, and little by little, and I met Adam and my husband, and I prayed for my family all the time. I called it my real family. I don't know why I called it that, but I think I was looking for someone to really just love me and accept me for who I was, and that's what he did. He never asked me about my past, ever. He didn't care. His family didn't care, and they just took me in, and they loved me like I was one of theirs. And though I look back and think God didn't answer that prayer when I was little, when I was really suffering, but he answered it later when I could truly just appreciate his love for me and just grace for me. So Adam and I got married when I was 25. I had a miscarriage, and I remember how devastating that was to us. And then shortly after that, I got pregnant and had Allie, my first child. And I remember looking at her and being sad, because all I thought about was my mom, because I loved her so much when I looked at her. And I thought, how could you take your own life and leave your children behind because you love them so much? And that was really hard for me to comprehend. I think that for me at that moment, that was a healing moment for me. I think that God was continuing to work on my life at that time of just the feelings that I had. I had a hole in my heart for my mom's death. And it hurts. And anybody that's ever lost their mom in any way, at any age, I think feels that. Just that hole in their heart. And I think for me that was really hard. But God worked with me through that moment. If I go back and read the letter, I can see where she loved us so much and talks about us in the letter. So life continues. We go to Broken Arrow, First Baptist, and we run into Gabe and Amanda Sherman there. And so we really start to get back into church. and things are going really good. My husband gets a job offer to go to Texas, and for me, I think this is a great opportunity to restore that relationship with my dad. So we moved to Texas. That relationship did not happen. My dream of being Daddy's little girl never happened. And my dad started to get sick. And so I got a call that my dad was sick, and me and my brothers went and got him and saw how sick he really was. And we took him to the hospital, and we found out that he only had days to live. And at that moment, I looked back into my life and just thought of all the ways God had really worked on me. I was able to finally look at my dad and tell him how much I loved him, and to tell him that I forgave him, that I understood. God gave me the gift of mercy to understand. For me, it was about forgiveness, and I was able to tell him that I forgave him for all those things in my past, and I truly meant it. So the next day we bring him home, and I was there when he took his last breath and holding his hand, and it's one of those moments where just a strange moment. I guess you would say peace too. Sounds strange, but it was also peace because I knew that I wasn't walking away with any bitterness anymore. And it was true forgiveness from my Father. And although my earthly father disappointed me, my Heavenly Father would never disappoint me. And I knew that. What I'd like to say today to all of you is that there's always hope. No matter what situation you're going through, no matter the pain or what you're facing, there's always hope. There's always redemption. There's grace. Just let God work on you little by little, He will.